Any opposed? And then I guess everybody else abstained. That's it, thank you. We have one memorialization tonight before we get into our applications, and that is for 19004 188 Essex.
Who's eligible on this one?
David Bear, Ely Becker, Mark Nassau, Stacy Goldenberg, and Joe Steinberg.
Okay, did anybody have any comments regarding this memorialization? No, okay. Motion to approve.
So moved.
We'll let Elaine move and Joe
Thank
second. That.
You got 2 seconds today, Joe.
No, 2 seconds. You know what that would get me done.
Yeah.
David Bear,
Yes.
Ely Becker,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes.
Mark Nassau.
Yes.
Stacy Goldenberg.
Great, thank you. So those are our minutes and memorializations. We have 3 applications tonight. The first we're hearing is 19006 Cartley Associates for site plan approval.
I would like to be heard on that, if I might, before we begin.
Yes, please.
I have to get this off my chest.
I understand.
I thought this was a mess, honestly. This application was deemed complete, and it was not complete. And what was missing was, there's one question in the application that says that that asks if there had been any other previous appeals made to this or any other township board, and if so, attach a copy. A copy was not attached. It's here tonight, and the reason it's here tonight is that I called Eileen and asked her to make copies and provide them tonight. Now, why is that important? Because in reading the answers to the questions on this application, which were very difficult to read because of the tiny print, one of the questions was answered, number 14, in part, quote, "The third floor was approved by the zoning board. As such, any use within this floor is subject to board approval." So the question obviously came up, which board? The zoning board or the planning board? And that was a very interesting question that should not have been raised. I took it upon myself to call the attorney for the planning board, and we talked about this for about 20 minutes, wasted of my time and his, and he finally said, "I really can't give an opinion on this until and unless I see the resolution of the zoning board," because it sounded, when you read this answer to the question, as if it was the zoning board that had to approve any other use of the premises. In addition, there was a legal question, approval. We talked about this for a long time this afternoon. I think between the two of us, we have something like 85 or 90 years' experience in this field. And we couldn't come up with an answer because we didn't have the resolution. I called Eileen and was told that the resolution was now available. That's why it went out this afternoon, and that's why it's here tonight. After reading the resolution, Ed and I had another conversation late this afternoon, and we both concluded, after reading the resolution, that the planning board has jurisdiction, not the zoning board. My complaint about this is that this application was deemed complete, even though one of the questions was not answered correctly, completely, because the resolution, which was the key to the whole issue of which board had jurisdiction, was never attached. And we can only see it late this afternoon, sometime this afternoon. So I think that the conclusion that Ed and I reached, and I assume you're in agreement with it,
Right.
is that this board does have jurisdiction after reading that resolution.
That's correct.
Okay.
On a lesser note, I don't think that it's appropriate that we should come to board meetings and find on the desk here the professional reports. They should be made available to board members prior to the meeting and not left on the table to be read when people come to the meeting.
All the reports were emailed. All the professional reports on this, all these applications were emailed by my assistant to,
They were emailed?
all the emails to board members.
Okay, I didn't get the email for some reason.
So thank you for the comments regarding Cartley, which we're on right now. We are hearing it before the appropriate board. I appreciate your commentary and the work that you did to get us to here. I'm glad we're able to now move forward with the right background information. Thank you, your point is taken.
You're welcome.
That said, I'm not sure who's beginning for Cartley tonight. Great. I invite you to come forward, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Helen Schultz. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm the attorney for application 19-006. The project street address is 344 to 346 Millburn Avenue. We are here requesting site plan approval for a change of use of the upper 2 floors of the retail space that was once Schultz Furriers. I have 2 witnesses here tonight, our architect John Buckholtz and Robert Schultz, the owner of the building.
Great.
Okay. Would you like to hear from Mr. Buckholtz?
Yes, I do. John Buckholtz, B-U-C-H-H-O-L-Z. Address is 123 Columbia Turnpike, Florham Park, New Jersey.
Mr. Buckholtz, please review your plans.
Chris, be sworn in as an architect. So, I'll give my credentials to the board.
Please do.
License or degree in architecture in 1979. Licensed as a New Jersey and New York architect in 1982. I'm licensed in Connecticut and Florida also. I'm a lead AP architect and also a certified interior designer. I've appeared before this board many, many times, as well as other municipalities in the state of New Jersey, and been qualified as a witness as an architect, and all my licenses are up to date.
Fantastic, so we're hearing you as an architect.
Yes.
Not as an interior designer.
No,
I think
not as an
That's
interior
a new credential
designer.
I was not
Yes.
yet aware of, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'd like to just start off, Joe, I apologize, that's my office that filled out the application. This was approved by a zoning board for the 3rd floor. Just so you know, we did an OPA request, as we are always asked to do an OPA request on this, and we were told there were no applications and no resolutions on this site. So what we did is we probably answered that as an architect incorrectly, not as a legal, but it was approved by a zoning board, and it's already there, so this board does have the jurisdiction. So we apologize for any misunderstandings as to the answer on that. This application here tonight is 344, and let me just grab my board. The drawings I have here tonight are the same drawings that the board has. Council, I think that we don't need to mark these if they're the exact same, or
We
would
should
you like
mark
them
them
marked?
so that we know what you're speaking about when you
Okay.
testify, please.
All right, as a full set or individually?
Are you gonna go through everything?
Everything.
Why don't you just mark it A1 and then just identify the
It is
sheets as you go
A01.
through? Yeah, he'll just identify the sheet. So we'll mark the exhibit A1 and it's, what is it, how many drawings are those?
There are 2 drawings.
Okay, and that,
It's A-0
okay,
and A-1, and both of dated April 3rd, 2019.
Great, thank you.
The drawing that you see on A0 indicates the location of 346 Millburn Avenue. The site right now currently has 3 buildings on this site. There's the corner building, which was at one time Red Carpet, is currently the lighting store. The building that we are bringing to the board today is 346, is the middle, always the Schultz Furrier for many years. And I think the last store was a wedding dress retail store, recently gone out. And then the third building over here had the ice cream place, and it has a shirt and tie store that currently, the shirt and tie store is currently open. This is at the corner of Main Street and Millburn Avenue. This is currently a 3-story building. The building had gone through sometime, it received a 3rd floor approval from the zoning board. Then in May of 2009, we came back with Schultz Furrier to create this as the first 2 floors as retail sales, and the top floor was for first storage. In that renovation, we provided egress from the top floor, did a full renovation of the entire building, and it's what the building that you see today. This is block 801, lot 1, and it's application 19006. So currently, this building is retail sales on the first and second floor. What we are looking to do is to keep retail sales on the first floor as it is today and change the second and third floors to apartments. I'll describe the apartments shortly in detail, but apartments over stores are permitted in the B4 zone. So we're conforming on that part of it. We have a list of property owners to the left, an area map, and I will go through some of the information. A1 that everyone has is the second half of this exhibit. The top half of this is the elevation of the building, and then the 3 floors. All the way to the bottom left, ground floor. The ground floor is the area that's in white, and the 2 other stores are left and right. The existing store will remain as it is today, but all the way over on the right, in order to get to these apartments, we are going to be, there's a staircase that takes you currently now, if you're in the store, in the first store, or the store that was there, there's a staircase internally to the store, comes up to the second floor, and that's how you gain access to the second floor. We are taking a portion of that staircase away and running it straight down with the existing stair, so that what we're going to do is, leaving the facade intact, is to provide an entrance door to a common hallway to get to both apartments. So in this elevation, or the building elevation on the top half of this is the building itself with the steel windows, the stone here. So within the area of the existing window, we will cut this in half, put a transom across the top, and we'll put a swinging door so that you gain access directly up to the other floors. So we've done as little damage to the front facade as possible, and some people may not even recognize that a door has been added. So there'll be a new landing that's put in here, and when you enter into this, you're in an area that's just for the apartments. So the apartments and the retail stores are completely separate. So you'll come up this staircase. The center plan on the bottom is the second floor. You'll come up, and as you come up, you'll enter the first 2-bedroom apartment. So this apartment will have a large living room space in the front. It has a kitchen, a dining area, bedroom here, master bedroom suite over here, and then there's an elevator here, which I'll talk to when I get done with the apartment. Entrance here. There's a back entrance to this apartment also, which takes you to the existing stairs that are currently there. So there's a second means of egress out of this apartment, as well as elevator access. You continue down the hallway and you enter the second floor apartment. The third floor apartment, but you enter into a foyer that's on the second floor, and you now have this staircase that this apartment will use going straight up to the 3rd floor, coming out over here, and you'll have a living room, dining room on the front facade, a bedroom on the front. There's a half bath over here, the elevator again, and then another bedroom with its own bath here. So this area is the second apartment all the way up, and then there's an existing staircase that is here now, and that has a second means of egress straight down the back of the building. So 2-bedroom apartments, 2 means of egress, and elevator access. The elevator access on the 1st floor, there's an elevator in the building right now. We're going to modify the steps that are here, and we're gonna bring a ramp in here and lower the back door. Get rid of a small platform that exists here today, because when you were in the store, you would come in the front door, which is ADA accessible. You would come all the way to the back, and if you wanted to do something on the 2nd floor, the person in the wheelchair would come up the elevator and go to the 2nd floor to do the retail. Or if you were storing coats, you could put them on racks, put them in the elevator, and bring them down to the customer on the 2nd or 1st floor. So because this is ADA accessible, the 1st floor, and it's cut off from the upper floors, we are now making this, so if someone were to come in, there is parking in the back here that's for other areas, so handicap can come in here or come in through the walkway through here, come in this back door, go into the elevator, and can have accessibility to both apartments. So they would be fully ADA compliant as well as accessible in this building. One of the other things that we are doing is what's currently here today, and I will, in front, I'll list this as Exhibit A2, Council. This is a picture of what you see today, and this is the window in which the door will be cut into. So it's staying within the confines of the window area and everything that's part of the window here. And then we have this blue metal roof. This slightly kicks back and there's a full story up here. So this roof line projects out, and this roof here actually sets back slightly. So if you're walking down the street, you will not be seeing this roof nor the windows that we are going to dormer. So there's no windows in the front, so in our apartment, we've got large windows for the living room and a bedroom that's up front. So what we are doing is leaving the blue roof, which is slightly tilted back and set back from the facade, and we're gonna create these dormers, which will be outlined in similar color of these windows. So they'll be metal, and these will be operable windows for the bedroom as well as for the living room. So these will be standing straight as a dormer, and then the roof line that's there will kick back, but this is all set back away from this front. So these will be straight out, so you'll have window, you'll be able to see the reservation, Washington Point, and downtown. So these will be nice visual across the downtown, but probably at Starbucks, you'll see this facade with the change, but the floor line is down slightly. So this is at windowsill height, so these windows are set down, the facade stays the same. So essentially, the only difference you'll see from the street line when this is all done is that a door that matches the steel and all the glass will be in the front, and then this will have these 2 punctures within that area here. This will match what's going on down here, and they're good sized windows. This is 18 feet between these 2. That will provide a nice visual for this apartment, which will be a very modern, contemporary apartment. The site plan that we bring to you today, is in the B4 district, and we are conforming based on retail being on the 1st floor and apartments being permitted above. This is a minor site plan approval, change of use, retail storage to residential apartments. The other thing that we have noticed for is we notice it because we've applied for the variance for loading space 607.1. So we're just asking for that again. We're not doing anything other than a minor modification to the front and taking the elevator for the upper floors. So we're requesting it again. It's been granted in the past. Parking. The retail space on the first floor is 1,362 square feet. It's 1 per 200, so we're required to have 7 spaces. The retail that was on the second floor was required to also have, sorry, I just can't read my, it was required to have 9 spaces, and the storage on the top floor was required to have 1 space. So 17 spaces were required for the facility as it stands today. So if we look at what we're presenting today, the first floor, the requirement for the 7 on the first floor remains the same. The second floor apartment requires 2 spaces. The third floor apartment requires 2 spaces. So that is 11 spaces. So therefore, we're lessening the requirement for parking. So we're 6 parking spaces less than was currently required there today. So even though there is no parking on site, we still have a deficiency of 11 spaces for this application. Right now, the entries and elevators provide ADA accessibility. The areas in the back right now, the store's all used for trash. On the back on the first floor, there's sort of a covered area here. There's some HVAC units. There's access to the basements, which have some utilities that are down here. So any trash containment or any garbage pails that are required by the apartments, the retail has trash down here. The apartments will also have trash and recycling containers that will be carted privately off the site. So that will be private carting. So that will be taken care of. So I talked about parking. Again, this is a pre-existing height variance that was granted, 606.7E4. We're maintaining the height as is. The building is not getting any higher other than the tilting forward of the dormers, so no change in height whatsoever. It's already a pre-existing variance in the B4 zone, which has a 28-foot height requirement. And the last item that we have is the waiver for an EIS statement. This is a built-out area. There's no other land available. This is 100% built out. So we believe that there is no negative impact, arguably, to what we're doing with the building, and therefore the EIS statement would be not necessary in our belief. There were several reports that we did receive. If I could just go through them. Tom Doty had no comments. Martha had no concerns with engineering. The fire report is the typical page. When we're all done, we'll send a CAD drawing over to the fire department as necessary as part of this approval. The police department, somewhat typical application that we get. The thing that they just ask is that the tenants be advised that they need 24-hour parking permits in designated areas. I believe the applicant is willing to get for permits for the apartments, so that in terms of what's required for the apartments, we shall do that. So that takes care of the apartments. So I believe those are all the items of concern and the full application architecturally. And
Okay, thank you. So we're going to open it first to questions from the board, and then just for everybody's, if anybody is here to ask questions or provide comment on this from the public. So first we'll open up to the board, and then subsequently to the public, just to make everybody clear. Go ahead.
John, would you mind passing around the photo A2 to the board, just so we can see that? Do you mind if we take
Sure.
a look at that? The other thing is, it's to you, Eileen. Why would an environmental impact statement be required for a minor site plan?
It's not a minor, it's a major.
Okay, so we've been talking about a minor site plan approval here, so this is not a minor site plan approval?
I always
because the
took it as,
application-
if it required additional parking, forced it into the major. So we're actually decreasing the parking
I
requirements.
think there were three things happening in that. It was built as a major.
Dan, if it's a major, we'll,
If it's a major, an EIS is required. However, the application, John, states it's a minor. As part of your discussion, you've been mentioning it as a minor, so can we just, all I want is clarification for me and for the board. Is this, it's my understanding now that this is a major site plan. So if it's a major site plan, I'll retract my question.
It
It's
requires
11.
a limit.
So it's a major.
It's a major site plan. Okay.
I
then-
will stipulate to a major,
Okay,
and it
congratulations.
keeps every, yeah, thank you.
Therefore, I'll drop my question about the EIS and you can ask for a
Okay.
waiver. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Joe?
I have two questions. The first is, you went over pretty quickly the fire marshal's report. Does your client agree to item 4 of the fire marshal's report?
Joe, before I get there, if it's a Knox box, it exists.
No,
Sprinkler
this is
system.
the sprinkler system.
It's a compliant sprinkler system.
It's not required to have a sprinkler system.
The
It requires,
I'll read it.
Sure.
Item 4, from the Battalion Chief Thomas Pisano. If not required by the New Jersey Uniform Construction Code, this official strongly recommends the installation of an NFPA 13 compliant fire sprinkler system throughout the occupancy. Since this property sits directly in the center of town and is attached to other structures, a fire could spread very quickly to them. A sprinkler system will limit fire from spreading in this manner. My question is, does your client agree to that recommendation or not?
Joe, we will provide a sprinkler system as required by the International Building Code. So when we go to submit and we do our review code-wise, we will stipulate to putting sprinklers in if required under the IBC.
It's done by the fire subcode official, no one makes that determination.
And absolutely, if it's required, we will put it in.
Not the marshal.
I don't know whether that answers my question. The question starts with the words, if not required by the New Jersey Uniform Construction Code. This official strongly recommends the installation of an NFPA 13 compliant fire sprinkler system.
At this time, my client would not be putting it in,
Okay, that answers the question.
okay.
I also would like to know, are you going to provide any testimony with respect to the loading space variance that you're seeking, your client is seeking?
Sure. The building has operated as twice the amount of retail space, if not 3 times the amount of retail requirement, and it never had a use for a loading space. It was granted relief on the loading space. This is now a much more limited amount of retail space. And Joe, I would probably say that in the 120 applications I've done before this board, we've never provided a loading space in downtown. So this space will be similar to any other application that we've done. And I don't believe that the 1,700 plus or minus square feet that is on the first floor would really need to have a designated loading space. There's an awkward driveway that comes in all the way at the end of the stores on Main Street, and the accessibility for any kind of truck getting to the back of this is difficult at best. So in this location, it is very difficult to provide that loading area, and typically it's UPS and it's FedEx which usually typically come in off of Millburn Avenue.
Thank you. I had a question with regards to security, just in the back, the fact that an elevator, opens up into somebody's apartment.
Yes.
I guess, just out of curiosity, sort of health, safety, welfare, I understand.
In order to get into the first floor, there is a doorway. So this would be similar to something like in Manhattan. There's electronic entry, which somebody hits, comes into the elevator lobby, presses the button for the elevator, and then the elevator has a key that has to be inserted into the panel, and that key will get you into either apartment 1 or apartment 2. So yes, there would be security, and we will have security lighting back here. It's also in the area that the space has been using for the last 10 years, and will function, I believe, correctly.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions, Mark?
Will you, be implementing these upgrades like low flow fixtures?
Mark, just a little louder so we can all hear you.
No longer, sorry. I just asked if there'd be any lead type upgrades to the
Okay.
facility, such as low flow fixtures, HVAC upgrades, LED lighting, of course, windows and insulation.
All of the above, yes. As a lead AP architect, yes, we'll use low VOC paints, we'll use recycled content materials, all the toilets and bathrooms will have to have the fixtures registered. We are modifying the existing system that will be there, and we are adding additional insulation to the building, both between the apartments as well as to the exterior walls. So the energy efficiency of this building will be better, and all of these windows will be double thermal glass pane windows. So we will not be a LEED certified project, but we will use greening measures on this project.
Jorge?
Yeah, no, you mentioned that the windows, the new windows,
Yes.
are not going to be visible because there is a setback. How much is the setback? Because for what I see here, it's only 2 feet or something like that?
There's a picture that's right, thank you.
I believe it's that.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's a ledge. This is all stone that we put on the original alteration.
Uh-huh.
So this ledge actually sticks out about 7-8 inches. So it comes out off the
Okay.
front, and then there is a gutter that is about 1.5 feet wide that runs the entire length of this building
Okay.
and picks up all of the rain that's in here. And so behind this is a gutter about 1.5 feet, and then this starts up on an angle, and the glass will ride up a little bit higher. So if I had to say from the face of this, it's about 1.5 feet to 20 inches from the face of this building.
Okay.
Will be set back.
So do you have a section to show that?
Yeah, so this is your ledge, this is your face, so you're sitting back about 20 inches. My windows would be in here, and this is that roof that's
Okay.
here. So when you're here, you're gonna look up.
You have
And you're
no
not gonna see this one. If I'm over here, so arguably walking by Starbucks, I can see that.
Yeah, but across the street you will see it.
From across the street, yes, you will see it.
Okay.
And you clearly see,
Yeah, on that.
This
Yeah,
blue.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
but it's meant to, it's not going any higher, it's meant to
No, no, I
blend
understand.
into it,
Yeah, yeah.
and it does sit back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oops. Okay, I open to the public. Any questions for this witness? Okay,
Questions or comments?
questions first, comments are next. So, hearing no questions, I would welcome a comment for this applicant. Yeah, no, we're gonna do comments at the end, apologies. Yeah, we'll wait till both witnesses, I believe you had 2 witnesses, and then we will open it to comment. Thank you.
My next witness is Robert Schultz, the owner of 366 Millburn Ave.
There was a question, right? Thank you.
I'll swear you in. Okay.
I do. Robert Schultz.
Mr. Schultz, are you the owner of 344 to 346 Millburn
Yes, I
Ave?
am, along with my wife Christine.
And please speak into the microphone just so it can pick you up.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
am, along with my wife.
Do you currently have a business at this location, and how long have you owned the building?
I bought the building in 1986. We occupied the space known as Schultz Luxury Outerwear in that location for 47 years, actually 3 generations. 2.5 years ago, we merged with a like and similar company down the other end of town, no, distant, 516 Millburn Avenue, Short Hills. So currently, we do not occupy it, but we had been there for actually 3 generations.
And the architects indicated you're looking to create apartments above the first floor retail space. Can you tell the board why you've decided to make these changes after 47 years?
Well, there's several reasons for that, which I can be here for like a half an hour explaining. I think there's been, as we all know, a dynamic change in retail. The second and third floors are no longer really valid for almost any type of retail. I don't care if it's national or whatever. So that's number one. Number two, my concern is also for the town. Our buildings look quite beautiful, and we've invested a lot of money in that corner location. The second and third floors for apartments would be, I think, a good use. I don't think it'd be a parking issue. I think it would more or less have a captive audience for the surrounding businesses and restaurants. So basically, it's the change in the environment of retail. The landscape of retail has been, I don't want to say problematic, but you have to adapt to it.
Yeah, have you had a difficult time recently trying to lease the second and third floors? Are they currently occupied as we speak?
Currently, the one space is not occupied for 2 reasons. First of all, in order to do this construction, we can't, because I think John explained to me that the ceiling in that at 346 has to be disturbed, therefore you don't want to have a tenant in there. So this is the window to get something done on the second and third floors. The second part of that, I totally forgot, to be honest with you. But I think that answers the question, right?
Yeah, I was asking if they were currently leased right now.
Oh, yeah, well, since we've been gone, I'm pretty familiar with Millburn, as everybody else is here. There's been, some difficult navigations, getting through the retail environment. The owners have to be very cognizant of the uses and the retailers that come in, because we can't have an enormous duplication of, and I'm not open, nail salons and a repetitive, concepts that are there already. So we're going to sit back, really be very selective who's going to go in there. It is, after all, a corner location on Main and Millburn. So we have several interested parties. We're well represented, and we'll make the right choice for the town.
This is all the questions I have for Mr. Schultz.
Thank
Excuse me?
you.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any questions for this witness from the board? Okay. Any questions from the public for this witness? Thank you.
That's it?
You may be seated.
Thank you. And by the way, happy birthday.
We have no more witnesses for this application.
Thank you. At this, I'm going to open it up to the public first before we discuss. Yep. Okay, so now is the appropriate time for anybody from the public who would like to comment. Come up and be sworn in if they would like. Please, I invite you to come up to the microphone.
I do.
Your name, spelling, and your address.
My first name is Robert, middle initial J, last name Engel, E-N-G-E-L. Home residence, 4 Gallo Way, Edison, New Jersey. Place of business directly across the street from the site, 46 Main Street in Millburn. I'd like to comment on the Schultz application, a couple of things. I liked the dormered windows. The architect, along with Mr. Schultz, takes a nearly vertical roof line and breaks it up a little bit. I walked to Town Hall today, I looked at the plans that you see. I walked back to the site. I think it'll look better, in my opinion. I think they've done a nice job with the front door entrance to the apartments. I think they've done an excellent job, and it still keeps the character of the downtown retail. The apartments, I thought, were well laid out and sensitive to the environment, as was brought up by the board. I like the idea that there's 2 means of egress from the second and third floor apartments. The last 2 points, I think, are very important to the success of our business and retail in general. Less demand on parking. I can't tell you how important that is for our customers that visit Umi Sushi and, of course, Blue Mercury. And then overall, there's a trend, as you know, you're professional planners. Apartment over downtown retail supports the retail businesses in town. It's the trend that the entire state is going town after town. And it's good for retail, a struggling retail base right now. So I would urge your support, each and every one of you, to support this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from the public? Great. I now open up to the board for any comments or discussion. Dan?
Just simply put, I think this is consistent with our master plan reexamination report. It puts people on the street. It is consistent with what's happening in large downtowns and small downtowns. I won't call it urbanization, but we'll call it people moving down into the downtown areas to take advantage of the uses. So I would fully support this application.
Thank you.
Hi, Dana. I would like to say, as much as I hate to agree with Mr. Engel, I agree with Mr. Engel.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. When we bring residential here, gets the downtown, so I support this application.
And I would like to compliment Mr. Buchholz on the design, and you seem to have put an enormous amount of work and thought into what it's going to look like and how it's going to function.
Great, thank you. Hearing no additional comments, I just want to make sure we have addressed appropriate ways.
Yeah, the applicant has requested a variance from the requirement to install a loading space, a variance from the requirement to provide on-site parking. The applicant has agreed that the landlord will purchase for parking permits for the tenants. The applicant has requested a waiver from the requirement to submit an EIS, and the applicant has agreed to comply with items 1, 2, 3, and 5 of the Fire Marshal Report dated May 8, 2019. The applicant has testified that if required, they will install a sprinkler system within the building.
Just
Yep.
one little tweak. The landlord cannot buy parking permits for the tenants because in order to get a parking permit in town, you have to have a registration and a lease. So he
So
would
the
not be able
tenants-
to,
the ten-
the tenants would be told they must
Fine.
purchase
accurate?
parking permits.
That is,
I don't know
That's
that
not-
that's necessarily,
That's not consistent with the information that we've been provided
I
previously.
think the tenants would be the ones responsible for.
That's fine.
Right, the
that's
tenants.
what you're saying. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, they might not have cars. I mean, if the tenants don't have cars, there's no impetus to make them purchase parking permits, I would think. Right?
Agreed, and I think we can't, but this has come up before in this board, and we can't make
Right.
sort of conditional,
Mm-hmm.
approvals on such, so.
Tenant shall purchase parking permits for a total of 4.
I think we've got to say the leases will require any tenants who have cars
Of course.
to require parking permits.
So putting it on the landlord to then,
The landlord is the one who's here.
to
not the
oversee
tenant.
the leasing of the tenants, okay.
And the client would be fine with that
Okay.
stipulation.
Great,
Sorry.
thank you.
That's it then.
Great, thank you for that comment. With all of those in place, would anybody like to make a motion to approve this
So moved.
application?
Second.
Daniel Bear?
Yes.
Eden Beckman?
Yes.
Cheryl Bernstein?
Yes.
Diane Dress?
Yes.
Catherine Hopper?
Yes.
Lynn Mastrocchio?
Yes.
Russell Snyder?
Yes.
Mark Astle?
Yes.
Beth Baer?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our second application for the evening, I've now lost my paper, is 19007 Brow-Eyed Girl. So we invite you to come up.
Gary Goodman on behalf of the applicant. We're here tonight because your ordinance requires a change in use. This was a one-room office, and now we're asking to be allowed to have a permanent makeup. It's a retail service. Courtney Schreiber is the owner of Brow-Eyed Girl, and she does permanent makeup. We're also asking for a variance for loading. She doesn't get any deliveries, so I don't think we need that much loading. As far as the environmental impact statement, I think the only thing we're impacting is eyebrows, so I don't think we need much on that. My witness tonight is Brow-Eyed Girl, Courtney Schreiber.
Courtney Schreiber.
Everything I told the board is accurate, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Schreiber, you're in the permanent makeup business?
Yes, that's correct.
And what licenses do you have to be in that?
It is qualified to have the AAM certificate, which is the American Association of Micropigmentation for the state of New Jersey, and that I do have. I do have my license as a beautician, even though it's not guaranteed, it's not necessary, but I do have that as well. And I also have my permanent makeup license as well as my microblading license.
And the building you're going into, 57 Main Street, could you describe to the board what is this building? Who's on the first floor, who's on the second?
Moonshine Restaurant is on the first floor, and on the second floor is a wedding photographer, as well as an eyelash studio right next to me, which is like right, yeah, that's it. And then Moonshine also has, for special parties, I think they also have, I don't, like, catering, or I don't know what they do up there, yeah.
Okay, and the second floor office that you're renting and going to use for your permanent makeup, it measures about 250 square foot,
Correct,
and the landlord is providing you with one parking space?
yes,
So your understanding of the land use ordinance here in Millburn, there was one parking space per 250 square foot.
correct.
I believe we noticed for parking because we weren't quite certain, and we don't need a variance for parking. Could you just tell the board what it is that you do in terms of what microblading is and permanent makeup?
Yeah, so microblading is a form of permanent cosmetics. It does fall under semi-permanent as opposed to tattooing, which is done with a tattoo machine, which is what you see on people's skin. I do not do that. It's more of beauty cosmetics, so it's done with a handheld tool with 6 to 10 blades at the end and dipped into pigment, making little hair strokes to create a fuller brow, which is very in right now, as that is the trend of bigger brows, because as women get older, they get thin out, or they have waxed too much, so that's what I do. And then I also do a thing called lip blush, which is done with a tattoo machine. However, it's just to add color to your lips, and that lasts about 2 to 3 years, and it's That's under permanent cosmetics, and then I also do permanent eyeliner, which is obviously you don't have to do your eyeliner anymore, and it's just done with a machine as well.
Ms. Schreiber, you have any employees?
I don't.
And people make appointments to see you?
Correct.
You also, I take it, go to people's homes too, so sometimes you're there, sometimes you're not.
Correct.
What hours would you be seeing people?
From Monday through Saturday, from 9 to approximately 7 p.m.
Questions for the board?
Mike, just one question I had. Can you just comment on egress
Into the space?
Yeah.
You're on the second floor? And you get up the stairs, there's no elevator in the building,
There's
correct?
no elevator.
The entrance is adjacent to the Moonshine. There's a doorway out onto Main Street.
So it's like Moonshine has 2 areas of dining, and then 55, 57 is a stairway up.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Questions for, go ahead.
Similar question to the last application. Let's just make sure, this is a minor site plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Correct?
It's my understanding it is a minor site plan.
Okay, then you don't need a waiver for EIS.
Right.
Okay, so let's just make sure that's on the record, because you asked for, I think.
I
you
did, I
asked
noticed for a waiver for the EIS.
for- Right, so
I-
that's not necessary in a minor site
Okay.
plan, so I just want to make sure that you're not stuck with that. Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead,
I
John.
would like the zoning officer to be sworn, and I have one question for
I
her.
believe she was sworn at the beginning of the year.
Do you agree that no parking variance is required in this case?
Well, I was going to ask that because I was told, and I can't find anywhere, that it was a 200 square foot space.
It's 240.
So it's 240, because it was office prior to that. Because I just want to make sure.
We noticed for a parking variance, so
I understand.
I have no problem amending to ask for a variance, I just, I guess, need a better understanding of what the ordinance is.
Previously, the requirement for, it was an office.
Yes.
That was 1 for 250. And the retail is 1 for 200.
But this is retail services.
Right, it was 1 for 200.
I amend my application to ask for a parking variance for 1 space.
It's like quarter of it. It just seems like one tire roll underneath the other space. Technically, you do have a requirement for 2 spaces. Because it's over 200 square feet.
Understood.
It's 250, so it would be required, 1.5 space,
Mhm.
2. But he did notice for.
Okay. So making a waiver request or you're requesting
Yes.
variance
Well, I
request
have,
for
a-
one
I have a
variance
couple of
request,
questions for the witness in that regard. How many people do you anticipate would be in your office or in your space at any given time, customers?
Oh, there's usually only
Fine.
one per time. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about
One,
a variance for 1 parking space.
and for loading
And for
space.
loading.
Mhm.
Okay. And this is your,
Maybe a question just with, what about the waste disposal? Do you have any special requirements for that or pickup?
So I have medical waste, and I basically call and they pick it up. So I just have to do it when it's full, basically, and then it's a company that I use, and they just pick up the bag, and it's in, just like a dermatology office where it has the Sharps container, and they pick up the whole thing.
So do you have other locations?
No.
okay. Questions from the public for this applicant? Thanks. Great. Comments from the public? Okay, thank you. Discussion by the board. Any concerns or questions? Okay. Hearing none, does anybody want to make a motion to approve this application with the two variances as just described for loading and for parking?
So moved.
Second?
Daniel Bear?
Can we first hear the, I just want to hear the, so it's 2 spaces and,
No.
no?
One space.
Two are required, one is provided for
One.
parking, so they're
Okay.
requesting a variance for 1 space,
Right.
and they're requesting a variance for the loading dock, loading space.
Yes.
Elaine Becker?
Yes.
Cheryl
Yes.
Burstein? Diane Agro?
Yes.
Jackson Halbert?
Yes.
Lori Lafayette?
Yes.
Josie Stiver?
Yes.
Mark Matzel? That's all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as they depart, we can invite up our final applicant for the evening. 19008, final subdivision approval for Anish Khanna.
Good evening. My name is Mark McMenemy. I'm the attorney for Anish Khanna. The application pertains to 33 Beach Lane, Block 2301, Lot 8. It's in the R3 Single Family Zone. We're here seeking final subdivision approval. Preliminary major subdivision approval was granted by this board several years ago after 4 rather lengthy hearings. The board extended our preliminary major subdivision approval through June 30th, 2019. If you view the record before you as including the township engineer's report to this board and the report of your professional planner to this board concerning our application and the exhibits which are referenced in Township Engineer Callahan's report to you as being already in. We've established in the paperwork before you that we have satisfied all conditions of preliminary approval. I do not believe we need live testimony. If you want live testimony, we can go through the letter, which you already have and has been commented upon. And we'll say what we've done and what remains to be a future condition before we get a building permit. But all the documents are in.
Appreciate that. Before you speak, just allow me to make one comment, please, which is that just for the sake of everybody's here, I see some members from the public just came in. If you didn't hear, I mentioned on the prior application, I just want it for your benefit as we go forward. There's an option for, well, you're not going to have any, you may or may not have any witnesses, but if
I
there
may
are
or may
any
not, if you'd like to hear them
I just
and
wanna
go through them.
provide them the framework for how.
Seriatim, in the same paperwork that you already have.
Understood.
We can build that record.
Understood. I just want to share with the public how I'd like the meeting to go, to keep it.
That's fine. I
framed
believe the
appropriately.
record is moot and not needed, and our proofs are already in.
Okay, so at the point at the end, I will allow, if there are any witnesses, questions. Following the questions, I will allow a period for comment, and if you would like to provide comment on this application, you would come up individually to the podium, be sworn in, and provide your commentary. I just
And-
want to make sure everybody knows.
And Michael Lanzafama, who was the engineer who testified at the 4 hearings way back when, is prepared to answer any of the questions which the board may have,
Appreciate it.
because we don't want anything to be unturned. But we've delivered a lot of data, and a lot of time was spent to get here,
Thank you.
and to make it easy for you.
But no problem. Okay, Joe, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
if
no,
you'd like to
I
speak.
just, I'm looking at the report that was produced by our township engineer. And at the end of her 2-page report, she says that she's reviewed and approved the maintenance manual for the stormwater management system, and she then makes 2 recommendations. My question is,
We're happy to accept those recommendations, and they can be conditions of approval subject to getting a building permit. We can rewrite them. We were happy to make them a little bit stronger. We think it's a good recommendation, and we'll work on it. And we're happy to accept that as a condition.
The deadline date, March 31 as well.
Excuse me?
She
Oh, yeah,
also-
that's fine.
That's fine.
We can do that. Yeah.
Okay,
So those should be
Conditions
part of
for-
the conditions of approval.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Other
you.
questions from the board regarding this application, which is, again, confirming that they have met the conditions from the previous approval.
Yes.
How many township trees are gonna be removed?
Okay, that's a condition which we'll work on with the forester, and we have to have a planting plan, and we'll submit that, and before we, get the permits, we will work on that, and there will be a plan. That's one of the conditions recommended by Engineer Callahan, that we have to work with, the borough for reforestation, and we'll get you those. I don't know precisely.
Try to save as many as you can.
Absolutely.
I think the forester would mark each tree that should be removed or stayed, whichever way he chooses to do it. But
We're happy to work
yeah,
with the
before
forester.
anything is taken down, it's not a number of trees, it's exact trees themselves that should be retained or taken down.
We're happy to work, if it's within the building footprint, they're gonna come down, right? Because we're gonna put up two
Correct.
single-family
I
homes,
understand that.
so.
Thank you. Further questions from the board? Okay. And at this point, I will open it up to questions. We don't have a witness, so we would open it up to comments from the public at this point. So if anybody has any comments on this
Thank you.
application, I would invite you, so please come up one at a time, please, and then you'll be sworn in.
I do. Stewart, S-T-E-W-A-R-T, Glickman, G-L-I-C-K-M-A-N, 20 Adams Avenue, Short Hills. Thank you so much. So the issues I have relate to maintenance of the property. I understand the preliminary approval was given per the previous discussion. There were some stipulations. I think they believe they've met the stipulations. But truly, the property is not maintained in any way, and I'm very concerned about that. I have some photos which I'll share with, if I may.
You can mark them and then they can be submitted for the record.
Thank you. There's consistently trash on the property, and the photos will show that. I walk by the property twice a day for the past 8 months since we moved here to Short Hills, so approximately 200 or 300 times, and no trash has been removed. 2, there's broken fence on Adams, which is not maintained. 3, the trees are not maintained. My property backyard adjoins the backyard of this property. There's a fallen branch on my fence. There are many, many tall trees which could potentially fall on our backyard garage. And really the most important issue is there are swamps in the backyard, and the photos will also show that. I think from a health issue, it's a problem. There was a press release by the Department of Environmental Protection about a week ago talking about mosquito issues in the state of New Jersey. There were 60 Zika cases last year. One of the recommendations is that standing water is a breeding ground for mosquitoes, and property owners have to take advantage of that. So I also saw in the public records that Mr. Khanna, and I do want to say folks are allowed to build, buy, and develop properties, but I did want to go by his personal residence in Short Hills. He is a resident of Short Hills, just to see if there's trash, if there's broken fences, if there are downed trees, if there are swamps on the property, and there are not. So Mr. Khan is a neighbor in Short Hills and knows how to take care of his personal property. And I know when folks work in my house, I always say, treat my house like it's your house. And I would say to him, treat this property like it's your property, except it is his property. The drainage in particular is a big, big issue. this idea of the, drainage, the solution they have for the rainwater pools. I don't know if it's proven. We probably have a couple of dozen questions on that, how that would work. So what I'm asking is that whether or not there is approval, I think this group should make very clear, wiggle-free stipulations on what has to happen to the property immediately. Trash picked up immediately and every month. Fencing repaired immediately and every year. Trees maintained throughout the property immediately, especially those adjacent to other properties, and then yearly. And most importantly, the drainage on the property should be addressed right now. It should be memorialized. There should be a clear stipulation that this is done. These ideas that are on the table for future development, I think, need to happen right now. And that should be the stipulation of this group. Thank you.
Mr. Glickman, before you finish, just let me ask you a couple of questions.
Yes, please.
About the photographs.
Yes.
Who took, you said a series, I don't even know, 5?
Yeah, so,
Bond?
yes,
I just wanna ask who
I
took
took the
those. Okay.
photos.
Let me just write this. Okay. And can you recall when you took them?
Sure. Most of these were taken shortly after we received the notice of this meeting, so I guess several weeks ago. I took several this morning just because it was sunny, and I wanted to show the pools of water adjacent to my backyard in the back.
Okay. So is it fair to say within the past month?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I do. My name is Karsten Schwarting, C-A-R-S-T-E-N, and Schwarting is S-C-H-W-A-R-T-I-N-G, and I live at 49 Adams, that's right across from the lot. And it looks like I had the same idea that one of my neighbors did. My wife and I moved to the area in 2013 with our 3 little kids, so a lot of this development and the purchase of this lot predates us. I don't know the applicant, and I just wanted to bring to your attention the same thing, maintenance issues. We have a broken fence. We've got trash there all the time. Like basically when I come home, I drive by a lot of nice yards. People maintain their lawns, etc. And then right across the way from me, you know, it looks horrendous. And there are no trespassing signs. There are down trees that are there. All of these photos were taken over the past couple of days, past few days, I'd say, probably 10 days or so. And I usually wouldn't come to a meeting like this. I actually tried to reach out to Anish when I figured out who he was through somebody who knew him, to ask him recently in person just to say, hey, you know, I don't know if this was done on purpose, that you don't want to invest any dollars in this property, or, you know, would you consider bringing the property up to standards and maintaining it? And the message that I got back is that he was too busy this week to talk. So I figured I should take the opportunity to voice this concern here and perhaps ask you if you can make, you know, a stipulation, the approval may be subject to improving the maintenance for those who live in the neighborhood. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the drainage issue as well. It's not a small issue. I'm not an expert, but I also have this concern because of the standing water. We've actually asked the township a couple of times, our neighbors have, to spray for mosquitoes. I don't know who made the call, but this has been among us neighbors a concern there. And one of the pictures that I gave you is kind of a Google shot of that area, and I marked where the water is. And I just want you to know that it's not a small amount of water. It is a ton of water on that property, and it pools in 2 kind of lake-like areas. I'm uphill from it, so even if the drainage system that's proposed doesn't function, I'll probably be spared. But I do care about the neighborhood, and I read through the application and you know, understand that theoretically there's a solution in place. But if it doesn't work and you actually put 2 homes there and a lot of non-porous surface, I can imagine, simply as an engineer-minded individual and having seen the water that pools there in regular rain, that it would unleash a tremendous amount of water. And I would like to know, kind of in situations like that, who bears the liability for remedying it if, there's an issue after kind of a theoretical fix gets applied and it doesn't work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further?
Yes. My name is Karen Horowitz, Horowitz. I'm at 41 Adams Avenue. I'm diagonally across from the property from Adams, and I echo and share a lot of my neighbors' concerns about the maintenance of the property. We were here at the hearing back in 2011, and since then, we've been living in this area, prior to that, and this has been, it more predates when my neighbors recently moved in, but has been an ongoing issue with maintenance. There's always trash there. I've even seen landscapers dump their materials in that property. There's no trespassing signs up, et cetera. And so this has been an ongoing concern. And I also share the concern about the maintenance and the drainage issues. I think it's obvious that there are drainage problems. I know that there are wetlands on that area, and I don't understand why the drainage issue can't be addressed now, because it needs to be fixed regardless of what is built on that property. And at the time of the 2011-12 hearings, when we were there, the engineer who had testified at that hearing had never installed a rain garden, couldn't speak to the cost of it or the effectiveness of it. And so I have some concerns about who is installing these, biodetention basins or rain gardens or whatever they're called. And, has the contractor ever installed them in a residential setting? How are they going to be maintained? I would suggest that perhaps the builder needs to put some money into an escrow account to make sure that there is money set aside to ensure that it is maintained. Just given the history of how the property has been maintained, I have some concerns that they're going to put in some sort of a system, whatever it is, and it's not going to be effective. And there will be no remedies. And I also would like to understand what the time frame is. So if, for instance, they get final approval tonight, why wouldn't there be a time frame under which they need to solve the drainage issues, before the lot is actually subdivided? And because in whatever contractor they're using, if, they decide not to build on this property for 7 years, and if it's 7 years before they address the issue, and if this contractor is no longer there, or if the technology that's needed to effectively manage these has changed according to the Department of Environmental Protection, who's making sure that whatever is current is going to be installed there? And then the other issue or question I have is about the tree removal and the extent to which they've considered that if they remove, I think in the plan it was that they were going to remove over 100 trees, and what effect that will have on the storm management, because a lot of the trees that are there obviously absorb some of the water there. And so who is evaluating that and making sure that they're not exacerbating the drainage issue? And lastly, I'm not sure if in the application, if the lot coverage that they're proposing exceeds the allowable lot coverage, but I just want to make sure that they're not increasing the amount of, non-permeable space, so that they're going to just make the issue worse, particularly for the downstream neighbors on Birch. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further comment?
I do.
Great. My name is Brian Glatt, and I live on 50 Birch Lane, which is located directly across from the lot in question, or the two lots in question. We have several questions. I was present also for all the hearings that took place several years ago that were involved in preliminary approval for the subdivision. We were quite disappointed, as were all members of our neighborhood. We understand that there are certain conditions that need to be met, and on an official basis, it seems that most of those conditions have been met, and we also understand that this subdivision will likely go through. I don't think it's a matter of potentially preventing the subdivision from going through, although I think if you asked every person in this neighborhood, they'd be thrilled if that were to be the case. But I think, and hopefully you're hearing this, and you're going to hear more of it from me, that the issue is more an extreme amount of concern about what the future holds for this neighborhood once you finalize this subdivision and the outcome of the subdivision when houses are built in this property. I understand there's no immediate plans for houses to be built on this property, but of course, there are plans to build houses at some point. My wife and I purchased the lot across the street before any of this happened, and we actually built our house. We spent a year on our architectural plans for our house before we built our house. We actually wound up knocking down the house that was there and building a new one. 2 weeks before construction was to start, we got a letter from the town threatening to fine us because the grass was too long. 2 weeks before we were about to knock down a house, we let the grass go. We had it for a year. We paid for the grass to be cut for a year for a house we're going to knock down. 2 weeks, we got a letter. And, I don't know if Mr. Khan has received any letters like this about his property or not, but we were quite shocked and actually taken back a bit that the town would send us a letter like that about the grass being a little too long. And that's exactly what the case was. But what we're dealing with here is something really severe, and it's actually quite upsetting. So I do have many questions, and I'm sorry if I'm going to take a little bit of time here. But the current plans that have been submitted to you all about houses that are to potentially be built, of course, can change. However, they do show houses with very modest sized patios and no pool. And you're talking about houses potentially in the $4 to $5 million range is what's been proposed. And I think that when you think about houses in that price range in this town, it may be unrealistic to think that houses of that cost may build a large house with a teeny little patio outside, with obviously minimizing the impervious coverage in order to get approval through this body. So I think that there needs to be some kind of contingency or something memorialized about impervious coverage, and perhaps maybe even the need to not allow expansion of impervious coverage. As you're hearing from all my neighbors, I don't need to reiterate just how severe the drainage issue is in our neighborhood, by the way, in general, not just this lot. Our neighborhood's a disaster with water. We all deal with it. All right, I have 4 sump pumps in my house and a French drain, personally. But this property in particular is a problem. So we're concerned about the current plans that show patios of very modest size, and maybe suggest that, or question maybe what happens when a buyer of those houses comes back and asks for a pool or a larger patio that will create more impervious coverage, and what that does to the potential drainage plans. Another issue we have is that the sewers that are directly in front of my house, which the property in question would be draining into, are already overrun in any kind of rainfall. So if any of you have visited the property in the last 48 hours during these rains, you would see that they flood and they overflow in front of my house, as it is. The infrastructure's old, and we don't complain, and it's just part of the deal of buying into an old area with a lot of character. However, when you're talking about the drainage system that's been proposed for 2 more houses draining into this system, we have significant concerns about how that's going to be managed and handled, and what happens when there's significant overflow, potential sewage in the area. And I think it's a concern, and I haven't heard anything addressed with this other than we're going to be draining into the sewer system. We do think that needs to be looked at. One question I had, which is probably the most straightforward of questions I have tonight, is that in the stipulations for approval, the county planning board was to approve these plans also for final, and everything that I've read, at least, and I may have missed it, seems to be that that's pending, and I was unsure if that county approval has actually been has actually gone through, and that approval has actually been achieved, because nothing that I at least saw in the paperwork in my review or my wife's review, and she'll be here shortly, has indicated that county planning board approval has been secured. You've heard about the property not being maintained, and I need to echo this, so I'm going to be standing up here. The property is not maintained. I got a letter for 2 weeks of grass overgrowth. I just don't understand or know what's been happening with this property for the last 8 years. Overgrowth is the least of it. There are dead trees. There are branches, large ones, that fall regularly. They are hazardous. People walk through our area regularly. My children play on the street. They ride their bikes in the street. And all it takes is one of those big dead branches or something not being maintained properly to fall right down. And it's a concern. The water and the mosquito infestation has gotten worse over the last several years. And it is a problem in the state, and I echo the comments that have been made previously. There's a problem now. There's a problem now, and we're about to create a much larger one for this area. And we are concerned about the solution. So that brings me to the final thing that I need to speak about, which are the rain gardens or detention systems that were discussed. I didn't need to read the record to remember extraordinarily well the testimony that went on with this about 8 years ago it was or so, because it was extremely upsetting. Because I remember sitting here listening to the fact that these rain gardens had not been tried yet. I remember the engineers for the owner saying to this body that these have not been used yet. One of you asked about that. Where have these been used or have these been used? And no, they should work, but they haven't been used. So I have a question that it's been 8 years now. Has anyone actually used them in a residential setting in our town? That needs to be answered. It needs to be answered. We have a major situation here. So have these rain gardens been utilized successfully in our town? We have water issues in our town. How are we going to be assured that they will work and that they will be maintained? We're talking about a property that is not maintained at all. What ramifications do we have to fix the water runoff, to my property in particular, if and when this solution that, at least at that time, and I don't know if at this time, was theoretical and has not been practically implemented? Will there be an escrow fund for this? Am I going to be stuck with paying for it? Are the homeowners that get stuck with the property going to be stuck paying for this? A significant concern we have is who's going to oversee and enforce this. We have significant compliance and code enforcement issues in general in this town. And that's just a fact. There are enforcement and code enforcement issues in this town. And this is a big one. So if this fails, what happens? Who's overseeing this? Who looks it over? What relief will we have should disaster occur? And I don't use the word disaster lightly, because that's what it would be. My wife and I built our home intending to live in it for a very, very, very long time. We did not intend on leaving. I will be very honest that what's been going on with this property across the street has forced us to re-examine those plans. And that's really, really sad. And it's a sad commentary. And my final question is how you can go forward with approval of a system that hasn't been tested or proven to be successful in our town, if that does remain to be the case, which I don't honestly know the answer. But I really hope that one of you do. And I really appreciate the time that you all have put forward to this. I understand it was, I think, 4 or 5 meetings 8 years ago, and the time tonight, and we appreciate the consideration that this body's given, and we trust that you'll give it the serious and significant consideration that it really does deserve, because you're talking about a whole neighborhood of people that really care about their neighborhood, as you can see by us all being here tonight. We have been communicating nonstop since we received the letter. We're upset, but more than anything else, we're really concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no one else, I'll just make a few comments.
Please do.
Okay, so in no particular order, the county planning board never reviews a preliminary subdivision approval. They're not gonna waste their time. They're only gonna review a final subdivision, which is approved. We're here to get that final subdivision approval. We will file with the county. They will review it. One of the conditions of our approval tonight will be that we will have to get county subdivision approval. With respect to maintenance, my client has actually filed multiple police reports with respect to landscapers who use his vacant lot as a dumping ground. It's an unfortunate problem. Many vacant lots, vacant properties get taken advantage of. Is there a solution? Develop the properties. If we had homeowners there paying attention to their property, they would be there to police it, there would be lights on. I believe it would be substantially less prone to mischievous behavior, which is offensive to my client. If you don't like the height of the grass, I can appreciate that. The code enforcement official sent you a letter. If they need to send us a letter, you have our address. If you want to copy me, Mark McMenemy, Brest, Laramie, and Ross. 325 Columbia Turnpike, Florham Park, New Jersey. I'm on speaking terms with the applicant. With respect to what if the footprint gets too big? The footprint could only get too big if we went over what everyone in this town is entitled to with respect to lot coverage, impervious coverage. Everybody who's a property owner has a right to develop their property within the confines of a zoning ordinance. If we're ever going to do anything beyond that, guess what? You're going to get a notice. You can come down. I'll probably be the attorney for the applicant. Maybe not. Could be a prospective purchaser who has their own attorney. But they would have to make out their case as to why there should be a variance. You can contest it, but you would be notified. The only thing which we're permitted to do is what you could do when you built your house. Build within the footprint. If you went over, you probably got a variance. And there's a body of proof which has to be met if you want to obtain a variance. All of the properties in this area comply with the township's stormwater management plan. Now, we're in a unique position because this is a subdivision which requires, which pertains to a property larger than 1 acre. Our storm management plans actually had to comply with the New Jersey Department of Protection, best management practices. So what that means is our plan will help your properties. What we're doing for the water on this site is more than any of you have done. You should actually see an improvement in what's happening to your property because we're doing far more than any of you are doing. How do we know it's worked? Many things are simply based upon formulas, data, table, and historical weather charts. You plug it in, you come up with a number which should work. We've far exceeded that. Is there a guarantee? I don't think there's any guarantee. But the only thing I can guarantee is we have met every regulation which looks into what we need to do on this property at the highest management level. What were some of the other concerns? Hold on. So code enforcement, the landscapers who've been dumping have even been seen. We're not just going into the stormwater. We're going to have the rain gardens on site. I don't know if they've been built in town. I don't know. But I know the math, the tables, the formula, they work. They work at the highest level mathematically. Broken fences. Call a code enforcement official. If you want to give me the picture, I will specifically, we'll copy it, I'll give it to Anish, and I'll say, can you please take care of the broken fence? Reforestation. There are a lot of trees. Some are dead. Yeah, some are dead. We're going to work with a reforestation plan. We will get this done. But let me just say this. You've asked for more conditions. That's not the time. I'm here to ask for one thing and to say one thing. We went over this years ago, 17 conditions. We've met them, we've proved it, we've given the engineering data, it's been reviewed, it's been met. There will be other conditions. Before we get construction permits, there are gonna be conditions with respect to perfecting our subdivision. We're gonna have to, prepare a plat, prepare deeds. If you wanna read our maintenance manuals, which are rather extensive, which an owner is gonna have to abide by and follow and submit a report to the town engineer once a year, I'll be happy to stay and show those manuals to you. If you buy this property, you have a deed restricted obligation enforceable by the town to clean out that garden and maintain it and to file a report every year. And if you don't, you can get fined. I don't know what more we can do. And that leads me to this proposition. We've done everything you asked us to do to come back tonight to proceed with getting 2 houses built in a very nice area of town. And the sooner we get them built, in my opinion, a lot of these maintenance issues go away. I'm happy to stay and discuss other problems, but on the record before this board, we've done our part. I offer up Michael Lanzafama if you have any engineering questions. I submit it's time to proceed and grant us final major subdivision approval, subject to the conditions which we discussed and which are referenced in the itemized report, letter report of 42519 from Casey and Keller to the secretary of this board.
Mr. McMenamy, thank you for your passion and addressing some of the specific comments that
If I didn't get them all, you can fire away.
I would just like to follow up just for my edification, because you're mentioning you're backdating to 2012, and what we heard was just specific maintenance concerns regarding what has happened between then and today. You mentioned, you sort of just threw out there a bit flippant, call the code enforcement. I just wanted to understand, has your client received notifications from and been able to address them? I'm trying to understand the full picture from both sides.
May I ask my client? I don't know if he's ever received a code enforcement notice.
I just think that would be helpful for this.
But I can say this, he has filed complaints with the police department about landscapers dumping
Let's
debris
get him
on the
sworn
property.
and we'll
Okay.
ask him.
All right. Anish?
Yes, Anish Khanna. Yes, I have received notices from the code enforcement. I own several properties in town.
This
I'm
is
in
just with respect to
constant-
33B. Birch,
Correct.
okay?
So I'm in constant communication with them. Actually, the code enforcement official told me to file a police report to assist me, because every time we clean up, the landscapers of the neighbors dump. This property is isolated. It's not on a main street. So only the people who are servicing those areas know of the property and come and dump the garbage from the landscape. So every time we have been cleaning it up. And just now we have had severe storms and severe winter, so our landscapers have not had the opportunity to go and clean up the property. As you all notice, we have been having severe weather, but every year we do that on a frequent basis.
Okay, thank you for the testimony
Thank you.
to that end.
Any other questions?
Joe.
Go ahead.
Well, counsel, I think you're gonna have to call your witness back, your client back. You indicated that there were 17 conditions on the original approval dated March the 7th, 2012. I want to go through every one of those and ask if in fact that particular one has been achieved.
Okay, so I'm going to call up Michael Lanzafama. Let's swear him in.
Fine.
Okay?
I do. My name is Michael Lanzafama. That's Lanzafama. I'm a licensed professional engineer, land surveyor and planner, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with the firm of Casey and Keller Incorporated, 258 Main Street, Millburn, New Jersey. I was the engineer of record on this original application, and I'm here this evening to respond to any questions the board may have. Specifically, Mr. Steinberg's request to go through item by item the conditions of the approval. Our office prepared a letter dated April 25th of this year, and in which we enumerated what those conditions were and how we feel that we have responded to those conditions.
To whom is that letter sent?
To Eileen Davitt. It's part of the record.
It's part of this one, here.
Oh, that's the letter.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Item number 1, the condition that was within the resolution states, the plan shall be revised to show the detail of excavation and fill required for the detention systems on each lot, including the 2 basins and the dry well. The preliminary plans shall be revised accordingly and presented at the time of final subdivision application. Excuse me. The plans were revised basically on sheet number 6 in the set of plans. We've indicated an area of excavation below the 2 bioretention systems as well as the dry well, in which the more dense soils that we talked about during the 2011 application would be removed and replaced with sand and gravel. And that has been indicated on the plan.
Just to clarify, that's the clay?
The clay materials would be
Thank you.
removed. Item number 2, an easement sufficient to cover the drainage improvements on each lot which are part of the subdivision application, including the limits of any proposed vegetation, shall be established on the plans. The extent of the easement shall be subject to review and approval by the planning board engineer and shall be delineated on the final plans. The response was easement information for the 2 proposed NJDEP BMP compliant bioretention drainage improvements has been shown on the plans. Meets and bounds descriptions of the easement areas have been provided for review and approval by the township engineer. So that is shown on sheet 4 in your set of plans. There's a shaded area that represents the areas that would be utilized for the biodetention systems. And then 2 meets and bounds descriptions were appended to the submission. Those clearly define the extent of those easements. When the final plat is recorded, those easement documents would also be recorded along with the maintenance manuals, so that the owners of each individual property would have an obligation to maintain each of the bioretention systems on their own specific property. Item number 3, the exact landscaping of the basin areas shall be subject to review and approval by the township forester, and the preliminary plan shall be revised accordingly. The applicant shall have a continuing obligation to obtain approval from the forester with reference to any revisions to the planting in the basins upon construction. The response was the applicant recognizes the continuing obligation to obtain approval from the township forester upon development of the properties. Again, on sheet 6, there's a landscaping detail for the bioretention basins. What the condition was concerned about and what the board members were concerned about at time of the original approval was that once the houses were built and the final landscaping were put in place, if those property owners wanted to change out some of the plant materials, they might be able to do that with permission of the township forester. Item number 4, the drainage system shall comply with the Department of Environmental Protection best management practices with reference to a major project for both water quality and water quantity. The drainage system has been designed to the latest DEP standards. The system is designed so that water entering the system would percolate through a sand layer in the surface biodetention basin. That would purify the water. Any larger storms greater than the water quality storm, would overflow into and be stored in large diameter pipes under the basin. This is the exact same design that was approved and employed and installed at 201 Old Short Hills Road. And that system is functioning perfectly, exactly as it was designed. As a matter of fact, I believe when the DEP came to audit the township about managing stormwater, that was one of the sites they looked at. and they were pleased with the way it was functioning. So it has been employed at other residential locations, and besides that location, we've employed it at about a dozen other locations throughout Morris and Essex County, similar designs.
Thank you.
Item number 5, the applicant shall be required to comply with municipal stormwater management ordinance at the time of submission for any building permit, building plans. The applicant acknowledges this requirement. This is a standard lot grading permit requirement that all property owners have to secure as part of the development of their property. Item number 6, a maintenance manual for the detention basins proposed in conjunction with the subdivision shall be subject to the review and approval by the planning board engineer, and a reference to the manual and requirements to provide maintenance shall be incorporated in the deeds of the property. The language for the deed restrictions shall be subject to review and approval by the planning board attorney. Our response was a maintenance manual has been submitted. Actually, there's 2, one for each lot. Per NJDEP requirements, the maintenance manual will be filed with the county register's office concurrent with the filing of the subdivision plat and the individual deeds. The language of the deeds will be subject to review and approval by the planning board attorney. In addition, we are going to modify the maintenance manual at the direction of your engineer, Ms. Callahan, to make the language a little stronger and make sure that the property owners are clearly understand that they have to provide a report to the engineer by March 31st of every year. Item number 7, a declaration of restrictions shall be prepared and submitted to the planning board attorney and the planning board engineer for review and approval as part of the final subdivision application. The declaration of restrictions, see item number 9 of the conclusions of findings portion of the 2012 preliminary subdivision resolution of approval, are contained within the maintenance manual, which has been submitted to the township engineer for review and approval. Item number 8, the developer shall be required to enter into a developer's agreement, which shall be coordinated with the various improvements required for the subdivision to assure installation and provide assurances that proper construction and maintenance of the improvements will be provided. The applicant agrees to enter into the developer's agreement to be crafted by the township's attorney and will be done in accordance with or in conjunction with Mr. McManamy. Item number 9, the applicant shall be required to install the drainage improvements or post a performance guarantee in the amount of 120% of the anticipated cost of the subdivision improvements pursuant to the statute, and provide a maintenance guarantee upon release of the performance guarantee prior to or as a condition of final approval. Per the township engineer's direction, an estimate of drainage improvements affecting the municipal right-of-way and infrastructure has been provided. The applicant will post the performance guarantee as stipulated as a condition of final approval, and that would include the maintenance bonds as well. Item number 10. The plans shall be revised to show any off-site improvements for drainage required by the township engineer. The plans have been amended to provide that requested information that should be shown on, I believe, sheet number 5 in the submitted set of plans. Development of the individual lots shall be subject to the submission of lot development plans, at which time tree removal, grading, stormwater management for the individual lot improvements, together with assurance that the stormwater management improvements for the subdivision are all properly addressed and coordinated. The applicant accepts this condition not only for preliminary but for final approval. The applicant shall be required to obtain soil erosion approval from the Soil Conservation District. Approval from the Soil Conservation District was obtained subsequent to the preliminary subdivision approval in 2012 in order to facilitate the removal of the dwelling and perform some soil operations at the time. That approval was executed. We now would have to go back and get a second approval when we came in for each building lot. So if the lots were sold, a property owner decides he wants to build a house, he's got to go to soil conservation as well as obtain a lot grading plan. So there'll be a second round of soil conservation oversight in our next phase of development. The applicant shall obtain from New Jersey American with reference to water supply for the individual lots prior to final subdivision approval. An approval letter from New Jersey American was provided to the township engineer. The applicant shall obtain approval from the joint meeting for sewer connections of the two lots prior to final subdivision approval. An approval letter from the joint meeting has also been provided to the township engineer. Item number 15, the applicant shall obtain county approval or waiver. An application has been submitted to the Essex County Planning Board. The applicant is aware that approval of the county would be a condition of any approval. Before we can record the plat, we have to get county approval. The county is a co-signator on the plat, as well as the township. Item number 16, the applicant shall comply with any comments contained in the township engineer's memorandum of December 9, 2011, and amend the plans accordingly. Where required, the plans have been revised to address the 5 comments contained within the township engineer's memorandum. We reviewed that at the time we got our preliminary approval, but we reviewed it one more time prior to submission. And number 17, as a result of extensive proposed tree removal, the applicant shall engage in a reforestation plan if required by the forester. The applicant acknowledges that a tree replacement plan will be required upon development of the property as required by the Township of Millburn's Tree Preservation Ordinance, Chapter 11. And I believe that concludes all of the conditions that were placed on the preliminary approval and how we've addressed them.
Appreciate that. Okay, go ahead.
So, in the 8 years since this was originally approved.
Can't hear you.
In the 8 years, or 7 years between the application and preliminary approval and now, I believe the statute has changed impacting performance guarantees by developers.
Correct.
I want to know whether or not that statute, and I don't remember what it says, but I want to know if that statute impacts number 9.
Well, it impacts number 9 in as much as any public improvements, anything that involves improvements within the township's right-of-way, and any buffering requirements are the only things that are permitted to be bonded under the current law.
Correct. So your agreement to post a performance guarantee in accordance pursuant to statute is no longer relevant, correct? I mean,
No, there's still certain elements that do require a bond.
but not the 100, but not the full amount, is it? Or is it, it's not now?
No.
It's only what's in the township right of way.
Okay.
Go ahead. Or Cheryl,
So,
you
yeah,
do-
so are we going to then require that they install the drainage improvements as opposed to just have them post a bond?
We'll consider that as a
Okay.
discussion. Thank you. Go ahead, Diane.
Me or Joe? Me?
Diane, go ahead.
So in the first one, you had asked Beth, they'll be removing certain soil or clay to put these drainage retention in. I'm just curious, how many feet down or how?
It varies on the 3 locations. It was a total of about 1,300 cubic feet of soil has to be removed.
But how does that mean by depth?
It varies from from the underside of the stone under the system. We are removing anywhere from 5 to 8 feet of soil.
And I know you said there's pipes there in Orchard Hills Road, so what happens when these systems, do they get clogged? I mean, I know what I'm envisioning, because I'm not
Sure.
an engineer, that there's these big cement pits
No.
go in? No,
No.
it's not that?
Now, this is, well, there's one dry well that does get put in.
And that has like holes around
Yeah, that
it?
has holes in it. That's part of the system.
Mhm.
That goes in the front yard on one of the lots. The other 2 systems, the bioretention systems, are basically a depression in the lawn area. And it's heavily vegetated with a variety of plant-tolerant species. And water from the roof areas and from the driveway areas are directed into that depression. The soil is a mixture of sand and topsoil. So the water will percolate through that, and as it percolates through that, it removes any pollutants from the soil, from the water column, excuse me. And the plant material absorbs those pollutants. That's why you harvest the plant material once a year and then you revegetate. Once that water percolates through, it falls into the stone bed surrounding the perforated pipes. The water then migrates into the pipes where it's stored. When a much heavier rain event than the 1.25 water quality storm occurs, the water fills up in that basin much more quickly than it can percolate through.
Right.
So then we have catch basins elevated above the floor of that depression. The water then drops into that inlet and fills the pipes under that system rapidly. And then there's a smaller orifice exiting the system so that it slowly drains out, so that it significantly reduces the amount of runoff going out into the municipal storm sewer system. Under the design, we were required to reduce the 2-year storm by 50%, the 10-year storm by 25%, and the 100-year storm by 20%. And we exceeded that in our design. In addition, by removing the clay material, we did test pits out at the site, which were witnessed by the objector's engineer and concluded that we did the proper design. We found a very sandy, permeable layer below that fragipan. So once we remove that, not only are we going to have a reduction in peak flows based upon the structural design of the system, the ability to recharge the groundwater table is going to be significant. So those peak runoff rates are going to probably be even lower, and the volume of runoff is going to be reduced significantly.
So a couple questions. There's no motor, there's no
No.
sump pump sending it out. So whoever buys this property and builds a house, they will be determine what their landscaping will look like based on having to put this rain garden and this whole system in.
Right. If you drove past 201 Old Short Hills Road, we did the exact same design. For the 2 houses that are built on the cul-de-sac, just to the left of the cul-de-sac, you see this depression. That one's a much larger system than what we proposed, but it's the exact same design concept.
And they don't clog, they are maintenance free?
Well, they're not maintenance free. They
So
do require
every year
maintenance.
they have to.
Every year, they need to, revegetate, rake, mulch, remove leaf litter. That's what they're designed to do. It's designed to capture leaf litter, papers, twigs, whatever might fall from the trees. You don't want to get that into your water column and into the storm sewer system where it can clog the system.
And was one of these 17 ensures that they get that inspected yearly? Is that what?
Yes, that's what it does.
Okay.
That's what recording of the maintenance manual does, and then the deed notice that's in the deed. So whoever buys the property will have about several different times in which they'll be notified that they have this obligation.
I'll take over.
You've designed these systems, and I wonder, will you also be overseeing the actual construction of these systems?
It depends. If Mr. Khanna builds them, I would. If he sells the lots and some other property owner will hire their own engineer, or perhaps they'll hire us, I can't say for certain. But I would imagine the township engineering department would also provide inspection services because it's part of a lot grading permit that they have to secure.
Okay.
Joe?
As I'm looking at these 17 items, I see a number of them that require review and approval by the township forester or review and approval by the township engineer. Looking particularly at number 3, again at number 6, number 7 requires planning board engineer and planning board attorney review. I'm looking at number 13 and ask if the township engineer has approved that letter. Number 14, same question. And again, number 16, has you received approval from the township engineer? So I didn't want to interrupt you when you went through all of these, but those, at least those that I just mentioned, require approval by somebody else prior to, the way I read them, prior to final subdivision approval. And the
It
question
could be a
is-
condition of final subdivision approval. We have a letter dated May 9th from Martha Callahan, the township engineer.
Do we have that letter in our file?
Here, in the packet.
Yes.
Which
You referenced earlier. the second
Ms. Callahan cites the documents she's reviewed and finds that they're acceptable, with the exception of the maintenance manual requiring some
Oh, yes.
some tweaking. I have not received any letters of response back from Mr. Doty, although we have had conversations with him, and he saw no problem with the plans, but that's hearsay.
But you have not received specific.
I
letter
haven't
from
gotten
him.
any, I don't know if Ms. Davitt has gotten anything from Tom, Mr. Doty, excuse me.
One sec, Martha.
Yeah, regarding the final approval, Marty? I didn't see anything. Oh, you got one? Oh, I didn't see that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What letter is this? Yes.
It's dated May 6th, did you
It's
say?
a memorandum, it's the first memo in the packet.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
It's a
Rich probably
memorandum
has
from
it.
the forester dated
From the forester?
5/6/2009.
Oh, you mean in,
And he indicates,
the
I have
thing we
the
got.
following comments on this application. The tree removal permit and restoration plan will be required along with the appropriate fee paid.
I think it's just a typo. Probably 2019, it can't be 09. It was before the original application.
Okay. Joe, is that your question? I
2019.
just want to make sure I give you a chance to. Okay, good. Joe, is that your?
I don't know, I'd
Okay.
have to go
Okay.
through
Fine.
2019.
these and see if,
To remove current restoration, they require an appropriate fee paid.
We'll be taking out a lot of permits. That's the plan. If final major subdivision approval is granted, it'll be subject to various conditions before we can get building permits.
And Joe, in Martha's report dated May 9, 2019.
I'm looking at it.
She does indicate that the plans have been amended to comply with the comments from the township engineer's report of December 9, 2011. And that was one of the open issues you were concerned with.
And she mentions the American Water letter as well.
Yeah.
I have one more question I didn't ask. We have a lot of construction going on in town that is causing water conditions for neighbors. What is the protection for these neighbors when this construction finally starts? Like if these dry wells, do they go in after the house is built, when the foundation's going down? What is the protection for these concerns?
The most likely, they would go in concurrently with the foundation installation, because that's when you have the heavy excavation equipment on site. In between that period, the Soil Conservation Service requires that certain type of measures be taken, such as the installation of silt fence along the perimeter of the site so that muddy runoff doesn't enter the street, vehicle tracking pads. Soil Conservation is very diligent about inspecting those sites. However, things do happen during construction, fences get knocked down. The township inspectors are very good about keeping us on our toes and making sure things get done. I know there's a new fencing ordinance required as part of the construction on individual lots. Not only does a silt fence have to be erected, but a chain link fence has to be erected to keep children from getting mischievous on a site, on a construction site, and also to keep the dust and noise down, because the fence requires a screening as well. So that's a new ordinance that was just put in place, I think about a year or so ago.
Okay, I'm gonna allow Mark to speak, he's been waiting, and then we'll come back. Go ahead.
Just a couple of questions. It appears just from these trash photos that came on, there seems to be some, obligate wetland plans or facultative wetland plans on the site, and somebody referenced wetlands. The state looked at this, I know.
Yeah, we had an LOI and a permit to fill the wetlands. That was executed as part of the demolition of the house and some of the lot grading. Since that time, if new species have emerged, we may have to go back and get a second approval on that.
There definitely is.
So when the individual homeowners go for a building permit, they may have to go for a general fill permit. They're isolated wetlands.
Two other quick questions.
Sure.
You had mentioned that you're attempting, or you're going to seek a 1.25 inch infiltration rate.
Well, that's the requirement of the BMPs, that you treat the water quality storm, which is 1.25 inches over a 2-hour period. That's what they call the first flush storm.
I mean, those numbers are increasing also.
Mhm.
Greater intensity of storms and.
Yeah, they use the NOAA-D now. So the system we've designed would be, if we submitted it to the DEP today, would be approved, just as easily as it was back in 2011.
Okay, thank you.
And just.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. With greater intensity of rains, rain gardens / any type of green construction is going to require most likely more than 2 to 3 treatments a year.
Well, that's why we're calling for 4.
Thank you, that's good. Yeah, okay. Do you have a question over here?
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, additional questions from the board?
Okay.
Thank you. Because you're a witness, I'm gonna ask for Mr. Lanzapama.
I'm sorry.
Because you were sworn in as a
Oh,
witness, I would
okay.
take questions from the public.
Of course.
So were there any questions from the public for this witness, just based on the testimony just provided? Okay, thank you. Okay,
I'll get back to where I started off. I think we've proven our case. I'd like you to grant us final major subdivision approval. We expect certain conditions to be in prior to getting building permits, but I think we've met all your concerns. I think your township engineer and planner agree.
okay. And with respect to outstanding conditions that have, as of yet, been met? I believe you stated, you made a statement, I think that's giving us some pause, is that we've met all 17, and I think then we just went through
When
it
I
and we
say
realized-
I've met all 17, well, for example, no, I haven't.
You've responded to all 17.
I haven't, I've responded to all 17. I haven't prepared the deeds for the subdivision. I haven't prepared a plat.
I agree, I'm just saying
I don't
you
have,
made a
okay.
statement, so.
I believe we've addressed them.
Thank you, okay.
Thank you very much.
Perfect, appreciate that.
Members of the public comment twice.
Can members of the public comment twice? Yes, but I would ask you to limit it to
Yeah.
3 minutes.
No, sorry for taking your time because I know it's Carsten Schwarting, spelled the same way. CARSTENSCHWARTING, 49 Adams. No, I just wanted to point out one thing because that's why I came. I feel like there was a little bit of a diversion to the issue with landscapers dumping on the property. I just wanted to say that among all of us neighbors, the maintenance concern, the red construction fence we had to stare at for 6 years wasn't a landscaper. The overgrowth is coming out of the ground there. The broken fence you see in the phone, on the photos, was on the property, and the branches that are falling, nobody put them there. It's because the trees haven't been maintained. And Anish, I tried to reach out to you because I prefer just asking as a good neighbor that you maintain them. But, I think the message I got back was, I'm busy. So that, to me, I don't doubt that you are, but shows me kind of where the importance might rank. And that's why I really would like, if the board can do anything, attach a stipulation to make sure that gets taken care of for us neighbors. And by the way, if we do see people dumping on your property and there's a relationship, we're happy to let you know. We're happy to tell them, don't dump here, and take a photo of it for you. But we do want you to treat that yard like it's in your area and provide some maintenance.
We can't engage, this is just a comment,
Thank you.
I do encourage you to have conversation after, but, thank you for the comment, okay. Final comments.
I'll keep it very brief too. Thank
Yeah,
you. Brian Glatt, JLATT, 50 Birch Lane. I just for the record, I want to echo the same comments. I think that it was a little belittling to hear that the maintenance issues are all about landscaper dumping, and that I just basically want to echo everything that was just said, that the branches, the overgrowth, the fence, a lot of the garbage, is not from landscapers, period. And I know that we are very careful in our area to try to, if you look around our neighborhood, I'm not sure if any of you have checked our property or checked our neighborhood, it's part of this meeting, but we all maintain our properties very, excuse me, very nicely and very well. And I, for one, living right across the street from this property, would absolutely speak up if I saw someone dumping on this property. To attribute it all to dumping, I think is a little bit inaccurate and unfair. And I think that there needs to be some stipulation, and it actually just, to us, shows a little bit of a pattern about maintenance of the property when you're talking about maintenance of much bigger issues. And that, I think, in essence, is the concern here. Thank you.
Stuart Glickman, GLICKMAN, 20 Adams Avenue. So in 2011, there were 17 or so boxes to check off, and I'm concerned that if this final approval doesn't also have boxes to check off, nothing's going to happen. And I think the evidence, the data for that, is the property simply is not maintained. I'm asking you to put boxes in the final approval that need to be clearly, without wiggle room, checked off. Thank you.
Okay. We would have a discussion.
We have discussion.
Can I just add one comment? I wish you well in your deliberations. You do have a limited role, you have limited jurisdiction. Your job is to decide applications and to impose conditions of approval which are within your realm. You're not here to enforce the code, but I would encourage you to report all this to the code enforcement official. That's why you're paying them. And if there's a problem, call Anish, call me. Mark Menemy, 973-966-9676.
Thank you for the
I have two housekeeping things. I just want to say, the first 5 photos that Mr. Glickman testified about, I think we should call them P1, Public 1, because I think we did not do that. And then the photographs that Mr. Schwarting, they were set at 4, will indicate that those are Public 2, P2. Thank you.
And there they are, okay.
Thank you.
And so Eileen, just a quick, as the zoning officer, just confirming that the appropriate recourse is through code enforcement on this. I want to make sure that, we all as the board understand the appropriate.
The code enforcement officer will be notified if there's any issues that need to be addressed. So usually between the two of us, we try to address it, but typically it's through the code enforcement officer.
Okay, understood. And as such, there's not ability to attach a condition with regards to
No,
maintenance
those are
of the
really
property.
health issues and
Understood.
code enforcement issues, not site plan issues.
Understood. Okay. Any discussion by the board or
Can our attorney
deliberation?
tell us what our parameters are?
Sure. I want to just go over the April 25, 2000, well, actually, the resolution. Many of the open items really are lot development items. So
Really are lot, I can't.
lot development items, really, so that they have to remain conditions until such time as the purchaser of the lot cites where they're gonna place their home, and then does the grading and installs some of those improvements. And the resolution of approval requires that they secure approval before any building permits are pulled. So those are gonna remain continuing obligations, and I'll just tell you, the conditions of the resolution, as I circled them, that still are outstanding, and they will remain outstanding, and the builder will not be able to pull the permit to put a house up until these are addressed, which are number 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 15, 17. Those are gonna be continuing conditions until such time as a building permit. They're not anything really that can be addressed right now. County approval is an outside agency approval. All outside agency approvals are conditions of the approval. The town has no jurisdiction over those. So those letters are gonna have to be given to our engineer and our construction office before he pulls permits. So those are legitimately continuing conditions.
And you've also heard the members of the public say they'd like us to have boxes to check. Now, what are our parameters vis-a-vis that?
Well, I'm not sure what they meant, but what I interpret that to mean is there are 17 conditions.
I think they're talking about the condition of the property.
Oh, the condition of the property. Well, those are code enforcement issues.
Yeah, that was my initial
I
question.
understand.
Yeah, those are code, right, those are code enforcement issues, so the broken fence, and I think the applicant's attorney, we can give you a photograph of the broken fence, but maybe you can arrange to have your client, will you agree to fix the broken fence? All right, so the applicant's agreeing to fix the broken fence. But the other issues, which are, mosquito control, or broken branches, or litter, those are code enforcement issues.
Thank you.
I'd like to just interject that we do have a property maintenance ordinance, which anyone can look up online. And the property maintenance ordinance deals with a lot of the things that you're trying to deal with now.
Right.
And you can call the code enforcement person yourself. Doesn't have to go through the town or the attorney, whatever. Mark?
Based on what you just said, due to, say, the lack of specificity of the site plan, because there really is none at this point, would they have to come back to the board again?
Well,
No.
because what the board, what you approved was a subdivision. So the board really has jurisdiction over the subdivision. The board doesn't have jurisdiction over individual plot plans for individual homes. Those are building permit issues. So, all of your conditions relate to the fact that the property is being subdivided, that they have to address NJDEP and municipal drainage concerns, and those drainage concerns have to be addressed before they can construct on the lots.
So your
So I would recommend,
recommendation is to circle those and continue to carry them as conditions.
So those would remain, the conditions of preliminary would continue to be conditions before they could pull building permits. They're gonna have to post bonds, they're gonna have to enter a developer's agreement, the subdivision deeds and the final plat will have to be reviewed and approved by the engineer and the attorney for language. Those are all conditions of final. And the only other two conditions that we're adding probably tonight are the two township engineer conditions about modifications to the stormwater maintenance manual.
And with respect to the performance guarantee issue that Cheryl brought up, number 9.
Well, I don't have the final plans in front of me, so I'm not completely familiar with the drainage improvements. And generally what happens is the applicant's going to be obligated to install the drainage improvements that were approved with the plans that were approved in preliminary. The only thing that's changed, because it's a statutory change, is the magnitude of bonds that are posted. So that just has shifted. So the shift for the requirement of the magnitude of money posted in a bond is shifted statutorily. They'll still have to post a bond, but the magnitude of the bond is shifted. The drainage improvement requirement remains.
Thank you. Okay. So with respect to this application, we've received testimony, we've heard input, we've had a discussion regarding the limitations of this board to be able to impose any restrictions on it. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I just want to say, I sat through the same hearings that they're talking about.
Okay.
And this was a very difficult case. And I think there is nobody who sat on through those planning board hearings who ever thought that 8 years later we would be here worrying about final subdivision approval. I think, speaking for myself, I figured 6 months, maybe a year, it would be over with. And I think that a lot of what we heard tonight are the frustrations of people in the area, and for those of us who live in town, we've heard about this in the supermarket, on the street, for months. This is nothing new. And I sympathize tremendously with the people who are living with this mess, and it is a mess on this site. But I agree with council. I don't see that we have a lot of wiggle room here, and I think this really is a code enforcement issue. And I'm sure that the phone calls have been made, and they're still waiting to get the appropriate action, but I don't think there's anything the planning board can do about that.
Understood and agreed, unfortunately. Thank you. That said, barring the conditions which would go forward, which I believe are 10 of the conditions. 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 15, 17. So this would be noted in final documentation. These conditions shall continue in the final site plan approval. There are no further conditions.
Well, always subject to outside agency approvals.
Subject, well, that's what this, yeah.
Right, any statutory requirements in terms of final. And the engineer's 2 additional comments on stormwater maintenance manual.
And the 2 additional comments from the engineer, thank you. Does anybody move to approve this application with those conditions in mind?
I'll move approval. Seems to be my
I will
job
second
tonight.
the approval.
Daniel Baer?
Before I vote, I just want to say that I agree with you 100%. I think all of us do live in town, Joe, as a matter of fact. We wouldn't be on the board.
I'm glad you know.
I am very sympathetic to everything you guys said tonight, absolutely. And I certainly feel your pain, and I hope you understand that our jurisdiction only goes so far. And but you do have recourse, and I hope you do take that recourse. But the one thing I just wanted to say is that I don't think this board needs to be reminded where our jurisdiction starts and ends, okay? I just don't think we need to, okay? Yes.
Elaine Becker?
Yes.
Cheryl Gerstein?
I second Mr. Baer's comments. Very much. Yes.
Diane Love?
I would also like to second what Joe and Dan just said, and I think it is really, really important to get the code enforcer, and if there's fines to be fined, you know, we have to go in that direction, and yes, on the approval.
Gaston Halbert?
Yes.
Jorge Mastropietro?
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg?
Yes.
Mark Matzel?
No.
Beth Zoll?
Yes,
Thanks very much.
thank you. We have one item under new business for this evening before we're going to adjourn. And you may do the dismissed, apologies for, unless you want to hang for.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Dan, for making that
Yeah.
comment. I also hate that.
Thank you.
If I may be heard for just
I
a
would love
moment
you
on this.
to sound up.
The municipal land use law requires
Sorry, neighbors, could I ask you guys to take the conversation? I apologize, but if you could just move out as we continue, thank you.
For the fence, speak
I think we
to
just-
Eileen.
The big photos never made it this way. Were there pictures?
It started going that way.
Oh,
There
here they
it
are,
is.
maybe,
There it
sorry,
is.
I apologize.
Does this show,
I didn't-
yeah, this
Eileen, I
shows-
think you have
didn't make it
I
this
think
way.
they're duplicates. I think those are all, I think they're duplicates, yeah. She's got it, yeah.
But Joe, let's continue moving forward.
10 o'clock.
The municipal land use law requires the zoning board of every municipality in the state of New Jersey to issue an annual report. That annual report does 2 things. It tells you and there's a long, I don't know, 8-page summary at the back that tells you basically every case that we heard during the course of the year. But more importantly, from this board's point of view, the beginning portion of the report, which is approximately 6 pages long, is provided to the planning board and to the township committee. And the reason for that is that the zoning board every year has recommendations to the township committee for amendments to the zoning ordinances based on the cases that we've heard before us. That's why Eileen provided you all with copies. If people feel tonight that they've reviewed, I know this was passed out at the last meeting, is that right?
2 meetings ago.
2 meetings ago. If you folks, now I also want to tell you that this year, for the first time ever, we jumped ahead and did provide a copy of this directly to the township clerk, who I presume has forwarded it to the members of the township committee. I don't know that for a fact. But these are recommendations by the zoning board, and remember that the planning board plays an important role in the planning of this town. And how do you effect planning? You do it through ordinances. And we have suggested a number of ordinance amendments that we would like to see put into effect by the township committee. Township committee is going to look to this board to either endorse or not endorse or change or whatever our report. I would hope, and I think it's probably appropriate for me not to vote on this, but I would hope that the members of the planning board would find this report to be helpful and would endorse the recommendations that we have made to the township committee.
Thank you, Joe. So, that said, everybody either had received it or is receiving it now. Can you speak to the timing? Because I'm inclined to give everybody to the June 5th meeting to really review and provide comment.
I can tell you that the statute doesn't really say when we need to get this report in.
Okay.
We normally do it in February or March. We're way late this year as a consequence of the fact that various members of the zoning board had various things they wanted to say, and then others on the board suggested changes. So it's finally made its way here.
Yes.
We're so late that I think
What's 2 weeks?
another 2 weeks is not going to.
Okay, unless everybody feels differently, I think it
No, I
might be
think
nice
it's
for us
good.
to be able to take this home and
But I would certainly hope
Okay.
that this board would endorse the recommendations of the zoning board.
Okay.
Sure.
Quick question on this, because I see, as it says, of the major issues, the zoning board has included, the following have been addressed by township committee, one is standby generators, but you still had it looks at least one generator application is not addressed by
You know, I don't.
The generator, they instituted a setback requirement, and it was likely that they probably couldn't meet that requirement, so the board addressed it. They still couldn't meet, and it was probably, they needed 12 feet more than 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we understand that there's no ordinance ever that has been designed in any municipality that covers every case.
Right.
There's always going to be someone who needs relief, but I think there's some basic stuff that needs to be done here.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of the issues that we've raised in the past have been addressed by the township committee up till now.
Have somebody on the township committee who used to be on the zoning.
Yeah, exactly. So I would hope that if you want to, I unfortunately won't be here on
You were
June the
you were not
5th.
gonna vote anyway.
I'm
so-
not going to vote anyway, but I would hope that if anyone has any questions, please feel free to call either Eileen or me directly, and I'll try to answer them for you.
Thank you.
And I would hope that on the 5th, there will be an endorsement of this report
Appreciate
for
it.
the Township Committee.
Okay, so we will add this to the agenda for the 5th. Please. That's okay, Aaron? To add this to the agenda for the 5th, the discussion, the follow-up. Thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn. I second.
I do want to point out
Joe.
one more sentence. It's a long sentence,
I
but
don't know.
I do want to read the last paragraph of the report, because I think it's very, very important.
Say it again, since it's
The
over.
last paragraph of the report says, finally, the statistical report of the disposition of cases heard by the zoning board in section 4 must be understood in the following context. There have been, over the years, applications presented to the zoning board which have been withdrawn when the applicants have, quote, read the tea leaves, end of quote, and sensed that the application would likely be denied. There have also been many applications which have been significantly altered to request fewer variances and/or less expansive variances in response to comments from the members of the zoning board. In other words, the term approved, which has to be used by Eileen in putting together the statistical report, while literally correct, can be misleading. Often what is, quote, approved, end of quote, is not what the applicants have initially submitted in their applications.
Fair point.
I say that because, you know, I heard around town, gee, the zoning board is too liberal. But if you sit through our meetings and see what these applicants go through, we're not too liberal. We're tough.
How many times would you say the applicants go in the conference room to discuss and come back and have a change
On a percentage basis, I would say probably 30% of the time, 35% of the time. Would that be accurate? Something like that.
Fairly high. It shows that
And some of
people-
the variances are so minimal, and we had one last week where they wanted a front yard setback variance on the second floor. It turns out that it was 15 feet long, but it started at 0 and went to 1 foot. Now, who's going to say that that variance should be denied? So it goes under approved, but it's so minimal that if you're driving down the street, you don't know, you'll never notice that that second floor addition is 1 foot closer than the 40 feet that it should be. Okay, I've made my pitch. I'll second whoever made the motion to adjourn.
We're done. Thank you all. It is warm in here.
It is, actually it is.
It's me.
Yeah, it's hot.
My eyes are
Yes.
Almost as satisfying like those four things that were there on the wall that I think are the worst things.
Isn't that Lorraine's job to change our pictures?
That she changed, I mean, the others I think are perfect, they're.
Oh, yes, me too.
I think they're perfect for this room, they're beautiful, they're lovely, but
Time for a
those,
change.
I don't even know what they are.
I know, those
I
you
know.
love.
I would like to see, they're not changing, we had Steve Suska used to do that.
Well, you know, and say Lorraine had her meeting in here Monday night because we were in the conference room, so she should have seen them.
Oh, she doesn't think, she thinks they're all wonderful. I mean, she wouldn't think, gee, I wonder how long I've been there, you know. But sometimes she's and
Yeah, I was there
she's
too, yeah.
accepting so many from the high school that we are now the art committee of our high school, which I think